Jesus had enough trust in to say, from the cross, look after my mum. Look after her. John became known as the apostle of love. He was the last surviving of the 12. The rest had been killed, history tells us, for their message. And so it was written by John. And John, unfortunately, has found himself in a tight corner. He's been exiled to a little rocky island just off the coast of what we know as Turkey today. And he's separated from his beloved churches. He's separated from the people he has poured decades of his life into. Remember, he's quite old now. And he's stuck there and he's in prison. And why is he in prison? It's because in around the 90s, one of the big bad emperors of the Roman Empire came to power, and he was, surprise, surprise, like many, many leaders, was very insecure. And he was always worried that someone was going to usurp him or knock him off his throne. And so he made it a law that he had to receive some kind of worship. And so he put temples all over his empire. And if you were a good Roman citizen or any member, no matter what your background was, as part of your religious life, you had to show up at his temple. You had to take a pinch of incense, sprinkle it on the altar, and just say, Caesar Kyrios, which means Caesar is Lord. Everyone. But that was a problem for John, and it was a problem for the churches, because they could pay taxes to him, they could honor him and pray for him, but worship him, no, they couldn't do that. And so it didn't take long for all hell to break loose, and John ended up far away. I sometimes wonder to myself, and I ask you, what is your pinch of incense? What is the thing in our society and our culture and our background that we just, do whatever you want, but just make sure you give that some attention. Just make sure you put a pinch of incense on that altar. I worked with a guy a couple of years ago, and he's trying to follow Jesus. He's really trying to discover what it means to have Jesus as Lord. And then every now and again, what you doing? He said, no, I'm going with my family. We got to do a ceremony for the ancestors or whatever. And you can see the wrestle in him. He says, but Nick, it's fine. It's like my pinch of incense on the altar. And I'm not judging him for it. It's really difficult. Just got to put my little bit of incense on the altar. Okay, let's quickly read Revelation chapter 1. I'm going to read from verse 12. I, John, your brother and companion in the suffering and kingdom and patient endurance that are ours in Jesus, was on the island of Patmos because of the word of God and the testimony of Jesus. On the Lord's day, I was in the Spirit. On the Lord's day, I was in the Spirit. It's quite an amazing thing. He's completely cut off from everything he knows, absolutely isolated, seemingly completely powerless. But what's he doing on the Lord's day? He's on his knees in the Spirit. He's probably in the most powerful position he could possibly be in the Spirit on the Lord's day. He was in prayer. I wonder what kind of questions he was asking in those prayers. Where are you? Lord, what happened? It was going well. Now what? It seems to be going not so well. Is there a future? Was this all just in my mind? Did I make it up? God, this has been long now. I don't see an end to the suffering. How long, God? How long? Anyone ask those questions before in their lives? Where you just think, hey, Lord, I'm not so sure. I've asked those, hey, God, I believe, but man, I'm battling to see. Am I the only one? You sometimes feel like that? Hey, Lord, I believe, but I'm not so sure what's going on. I wonder what kind of questions you guys are asking today. And then he goes on and he says, and I heard behind me a loud voice like a trumpet, which said, write on a scroll what you see and send it to the 7 churches, to Ephesus. These are real churches, by the way. To Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, and Laodicea. And then John did what was the risky move. I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me. And when I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands, and among the lampstands was someone like a son of man. And he begins to, this is the first of the very strange images he starts to see. Someone like a son of man, dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet, with a golden sash around his chest. The hair on his head was white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like bronze glowing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and coming out of his mouth was a sharp, double-edged sword. His face was like the sun shining in all of its brilliance. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. Then he placed his right hand on me and said, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys to death and Hades. Write therefore what you have seen and what is now and what will take place later. The mystery of the 7 stars that you saw in my right hand and of the 7 golden lampstands is this. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches. Very helpful that he gave him just a little snippet of insight. So I want you to imagine John, who is searching for encouragement. He's cut off from the communities he loves. He has heard wind of the fact, possibly through prison guards mocking him, saying, your churches are compromising. Your churches are actually being under such pressure. Some are just giving up. Some are being arrested. Can you imagine that feeling as a shepherd? He was a profound shepherd, saying, I can do nothing to come alongside them. All I'm hearing is report after report. What do I do? I reckon he was searching for a picture of Jesus as he prayed. Jesus, and he had lots. I mean, he had all the intimate conversations. He had seen Jesus perform the miracles. He had seen the multiplication of food and the raising of the dead. Remember Lazarus? He had been in the boat when the storm had raged and Jesus was sleeping. How can you sleep? Don't you care? Jesus calms the storm. So he had it all here. He had it all here. And you and I have our own story with Jesus that we can reference backwards and forwards. I know when God did this. I remember how far he took us. Have you got those stories in your head? Just your journey. Even if you've walked with him for a little bit of time, you already have a testimony that in your mind you can reference, you can go back to. You say, I remember what God did. I wonder if he was saying to himself, like maybe we say to ourselves sometimes, like, how does all of this apply right now to my life? Because this situation, I haven't been here before. This crisis I'm facing, I don't know what to do. This thing going on with our community, I don't know what to do. I wonder if he was digging deep for that picture of Jesus. And so Jesus does show him something of himself. But he doesn't show him Jesus, the man of Galilee, or Jesus, the one multiplying food. No, he shows him something even more amazing. He shows him a picture of himself, Jesus as he is right now. The glorified, risen, all-conquering, all-powerful Son of God and Son of Man. Bam! Right in front of his face. That is the picture of Jesus that John needed. And that's the picture of Jesus we're going to look at a little bit today. Isn't that amazing? Jesus wants to show himself not as he was then, and as he was then is very important. It fuels our faith. It helps us connect with what he calls us to in this world. But Jesus as he is now is as we've described him, and we're going to unpack some of those pictures a little bit. Are you okay with that? All right. Jesus as he is now. And so this is what we hear from John. He says, I turned around. Again, sometimes it's a dangerous thing to turn around. You're not quite sure what you're going to see. I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me. And when I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And among those lampstands was someone like a son of man. You might have picked up already, but if you didn't, I'm going to highlight it. John uses the word in English like all the time. I don't know if you've got kids, but if I could tell them to stop using the word like, it would be great. So I think I'm going to go to my friends tonight, and then maybe tomorrow anyone? Yeah. Maybe some of the youngsters do that as well. But John uses the word like a lot. Because how do you describe what's virtually indescribable? Well, he was like a son of man, and he had like this robe, and there was like this, and he had eyes that were a bit like fire, really. How do you describe what's indescribable? So what does John do? He dips into the memory bank of everything he knows, which is really the Old Testament. And so most of the things he's describing, it's like he has something like a patchwork that he sews together to describe what he's seeing of Jesus. And Daniel features a lot, Ezekiel features a bit, and all these references to the Old Testament as John grapples with what is virtually indescribable in front of his eyes. So he says, 7 golden lampstands, we discover that's the churches. Those churches, our church. He sees someone like a son of man. And a son of man is really a human being. So he's seeing a human form, someone like a son of man, but he's standing among the lampstands. He's among the lampstands. He's not above, next to, underneath, beside. He's among the lampstands. Jesus is among his church. He's among his church this morning. That's quite a thought. Especially if you get into the routine of meeting as a church and it's like, okay, Josh is on worship, who's doing announcements, who's doing that, who's speaking, who's doing coffee and tea and making the biscuits, and who's doing the offering. Just remember, Jesus is among his church. He is present. He's present with us. He's present for us all the time. It's quite an amazing thought, That surely has to put courage in us. That surely has to put courage in John. Because this man on his knees crying from a lonely island, and us in wherever in Glenwood, in the city of Durban, saying, God, what's going on? Where are you? And Jesus says, but I'm right among you. I'm moving among my church. It's a wonderful thought this morning. I don't know lots and lots of churches, but the ones I know, like Glenridge and The Rock and Harvest and Emmanuel, and you think of the church, Olive Tree, I don't know them all, obviously. Jesus is among his church this morning. Isn't that an amazing thought? He's moving among us. He's moving with us this morning as well. It's an incredible, incredible thought. Someone like a son of man. And isn't it amazing that John heard Jesus say something amazing years before that? Philip had said to him, hey, Jesus, just show us the Father. That'll be enough. And he said, hey, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So there's this kind of interesting thing. John's probably the first person in history to really have these two images brought together for him. Because obviously there's the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. But Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. John is now seeing the mixing of these two things right in front of his eyes. It's pretty amazing. If you want to see Jesus, you're going to find him in his church. You really are. He's among the church all the time. He's not, we're funny, we go through times in life where we're wrestling maybe with God. And what do? We run away from the church. It's nuts when you think about it. Where's Jesus? He's among the lampstands. He's among his church. He's dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet. Now, a long robe all the way down was clothing of distinction in the day. And some people say that was actually a priestly robe. So what does it say about Jesus? That he is the great, great high priest. He's the mediator between God and man. The word priest, the English word priest, comes from the Latin pontifex, which really speaks of a bridge builder. Jesus builds the bridge between God and man. And what's more, he says to you and I, you are my priesthood, which means that you and I build the bridge between God and man. So as City Gate lives out in the community, as City Gate gathers and opens its space, always building a bridge. Always building a bridge. It's quite an amazing thought. We are the bridge builders. When we encounter people on the street, in our neighborhoods, our families, our work colleagues, as we invite people to our space to have a coffee or whatever it may be, we're building a bridge. We're being a priest for God. That's an amazing thought. Jesus, our great high priest, and he calls us to do exactly the same thing. He's got a golden sash. Have you seen those? What are those? Pageants or whatever. Is that right? A pageant, is that what you say? Got a golden sash. When you had a belt around your waist, you were at work. When that belt was over your shoulder, you were at rest. Your work was complete. Isn't that interesting? There's Jesus. What did he say on the cross? It is finished. The work is complete. So this great high priest with a long robe has a sash around from his shoulder down, and he's saying, it's done. Citygate, our message is, it is complete. The work is finished. There's no more jumping through fiery hoops to trying to find your way to God. Jesus just says, come. The work is complete in full. I think John would have clocked this all the time. Remember, John was actually at the cross, remember. Some of the others had skedaddled. John was there. And now he sees a priest with a completed work. So I think his mind is being blown away. His head and his hair were white like wool, as white as snow. That speaks of age and distinction. Am I right? I had hoped one day I would have lovely white hair. A couple of ladies and gentlemen here. I'm shedding my feathers so fast I'm not going to get there. That's why I got to keep it really. My family have actually said, you got to just give it up, Dad. It's embarrassing. Just lose it. But I'm kind of clinging on. I'm taller than them for now, But white hair, it speaks of wisdom and age. And, he's been around a long time. He's been around a very, very long time. And he's going to be around a long time still. A very long time. He's wise. He knows all things. He's outlived everything and everyone that has stood up to oppose him. And not most things. Everything and everyone that has stood up to oppose him. That's a pretty cool thing. He's outlived every empire, every superpower, every ideology, every philosophy, you name it. He's outlived them all and continues to do so. Every social mood, every attempt to so-called kind of kill God, if you like, in the public sphere and in the privacy of one's heart. I come from England where it's anecdotal, but there's stories of people being arrested for praying in public Hey, we don't want this God. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And yet, I think God says, are you joking? Are you joking? Do you think you can silence me? Do you think you can shut me up? In 1966, was before my time. Not yours there, Vessel. In 1966, Time magazine famously ran a headline that said, "Is God dead?" I mean, it's a preposterous headline, but they were tracking the work of, would you believe it, theologians who had came to this theory that God is actually dead. I mean, that's insane. I don't know if any of you remember, he was a big hit in the UK. Who knows the name Richard Dawkins? Show me a hand. Who knows Richard Dawkins? Isn't that amazing? Less than a third of you know the name Richard Dawkins. But 20 years ago, he wrote a book called The God Delusion. And it was hot stuff on the press, certainly in the United Kingdom. And he was one of our leading atheists. And isn't it kind of funny that you don't even know who he is? I wonder, every time we try to bury God, didn't John Lennon say, hey, we're more popular than Jesus? Where's John Lennon right now? Hey, come on, even our very own Jay-Z said, come on, my party's going to be around till Jesus returns. Either Jesus is coming back very soon or something has happened. God has a funny way of outliving those who would carry his coffin. He's got a very amazing knack of doing that. His head and hair were white like wool, as white as snow. The Jesus we worship is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And if you are not being held together right now, if you feel your life is fraying at the seams, if you feel it's disintegrating, if something's in front of you have no control over, I want to assure you, church, this morning, Jesus is before everything, and in him all things hold together. From here, the little mental health of mine, to the cells of my body, to the cosmos, in him all things hold together. He's amazing. If you're not holding it together, if it seems to be falling apart, just keep moving towards him, not away from him, because he has a way of holding things together. His eyes, it says, were like flames of fire. When you see someone with fire in their eyes, what does it make you think of? You're allowed to speak back. What is it? When you see fire, when you say, hey, that person's got fire in their eyes, what do you think of? Don't mess with them. What else when you see someone with fire in their eyes? Angry, passion. Like, man, it's not neutral. It's not passive. They're on a mission. Wildness, passion. This is not the stuff of gentle Jesus, meek and mild. This is not the stuff of, okay, just a gentle, I'm just going to hold you. This is the stuff of dangerous resolve, fire in the eyes. What does fire do? It purifies and it penetrates. His eyes are fire. Things like gold are refined in fire to remove impurities, and yet his eyes look at you and I this morning. Those eyes that have fire in them look at you and me this morning. They look at us. They look at us with great affection, but with great fire. And it purifies what's impure. It just brings to the surface what shouldn't be there. It looks past all of our kind of pretenses and our walls and our clever masks and our posturing and nonsense. And it's just, I see through all of that stuff. I know exactly who you are. And his eyes burn away impurity. And you know what happens? You know, when his eyes sometimes are most effective in our lives, it's through trial, actually. It's through trial. There's some things you're going to learn, and we learn about Jesus that we only learn in times of squeezing and trial and difficulty. And that's not because he's the author of those things, but his eyes like blazing fire are like taking pottery and you put it in a kiln to harden it. But when it's hardened, that'll never be taken from you. The stuff we learn about who he is and what he's like, when we learn about it in a time of trial and difficulty, no one will ever take it away from you. You can't download it. It doesn't come with an app. You learn it deep inside of your soul. And his eyes are on us like blazing fire. Are his eyes on you this morning? Are his eyes on you this morning? Penetrating, removing false security, all that stuff. And it says his feet were like bronze glowing in the furnace. Now that, I've been told, is a very tricky thing to try and translate into English. But if they've got it right, the translator people, then what John is seeing is this picture from Daniel. I don't know if anyone's read Daniel. Anyone read the book of Daniel here? There's this image in Daniel where Daniel is shown this like very big statue, which represents the kingdoms of this world. But the statue has feet that are made of iron and clay. So partly strong, but partly very brittle. And then we see, no, there's one with feet like hardened like bronze. So there's only one kingdom that's going to last. In fact, in Daniel's vision, a rock smashes the feet of those empires and they all come crumbling down. But Jesus has feet like burnished bronze. It's quite cool. He's tried, he's tested, he's steady, he's strong. The kingdoms of this world crumble, but the kingdom of God stands for all eternity. Sometimes it's interesting, we listen to impassioned political views and we think our destiny kind of rises and falls on who's in charge and what policies are being passed. And there is reality to the day-to-day effect of that. I'm not denying that. But it's so interesting that Revelation wants to remind us that there is actually a phantom menace. Star Wars got it right. No, I'm joking. But there is a phantom menace, and he's animating and empowering those who would come into agreement with him. All of that is real. And yet there's one with feet like burnished bronze, who is steady, who's sure, who's tried, who's tested, who will endure for all things. And where are we? We are found in him always. And it's nearly coming through the picture here. He had a voice like the sound of rushing waters. Have you ever stood close to a very powerful waterfall? Do you feel, you can almost feel the sound in you. You know that experience? It's like inside, this Now imagine that's Jesus' voice. And when you're that close, you can't hear anything else. You just hear that voice. That sound like, wow, like it almost shakes your body. It's so powerful. And that's what his voice is like. It really drowns out other voices if we let it. It surrounds us completely, fills us. And of course, water breaks down resistance. It cuts away nonsense, and it gives us life. In his right hand, he held the 7 stars. And I'm not going to go, for the sake of time, into some of the really cool imagery, but very in a nutshell, it was a goddess in the kind of pantheon of gods of the day that what was she called? But it was very funny, given what Jesus was saying here. She called herself the beginning and the end. Isn't that fascinating, eh? And what does Jesus say of himself? I'm the beginning and the end. And around the Roman emperor's throne, it was decorated with the stars and the planets and so on. And what's Jesus saying? Are you joking? I hold the stars. I hold them in my hand. Isn't that amazing? I'm in charge. I have more control over all of this. Your life is not the sort of function of blind fate or the gods, as it were, or blind karma. No. I have the final say on your life. Jesus always does. And in his right hand, he holds the stars. And out of his mouth comes a sword. Again, I won't go into detail there, but you can picture it. Weird picture. The sword. Like actually, the Roman sword was actually shaped a little bit like a tongue, so it had 2 edges. So isn't it amazing? You pick that image, the sword comes out of his mouth, but it's a tongue. The word of God is very powerful. And then, he says, his face was like the sun, shining in all its brilliance. Have you ever tried to stare at the sun? If you can see me, you probably haven't tried to stare at the sun because it doesn't do good to your eyes. We're not designed to look at the sun. It's powerful. It's overwhelming. It's quite a thing to stare at the sun. It's the pinnacle of brightness. But Moses wrote so many years before this. He made this amazing prayer. He said, "The Lord bless you and keep you and make his face to what? Shine on you." The nation of Israel, they would sing, "Let the light of your face shine on us." And now John, in that moment, on that island, having this encounter on the Lord's day, he's seeing what? He's seeing the sun, the light of God's face shining on him. That's an amazing thing. If this is true, consider this morning that the light of his face is shining on each of us. It's shining on you. Just consider the light of God's. We all know what the sun is. Thank the Lord. We live in Durban. We get a lot of sun. We all know what that's like. The light of God's face is shining on you. Whatever your situation and circumstances may be this morning, the light of his face shines on you. It's a beautiful thought. And so that's what John saw. And that's what he encountered. And that was quite a thing. So what does he do? Well, he does what every sane person would do in that situation. He hits the deck. Bang. He hits the deck faster than you can take a breath. He hits the floor so quickly because he thinks, this is not like one of those, I had this little impression and I just had this impression and I think I saw Jesus. No. This is an open picture, vision in front of him. He's seeing the real deal. So he hits the floor very, very fast. When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead. And then he placed his right hand on me and he said this, "Do not be afraid." I thought I was going to die. But Jesus said, "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and behold, I live forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and Hades. Have you ever felt like kneeling is just not enough? We've had that experience. Kneeling's just not going to cut it. I need to just get face down on the ground. And it's true. In fact, John really did think it was game over. So Jesus had to say, look, I'm just going to put my hand on your shoulder and say, hey, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It's quite an amazing thing that the God who sustains the cosmos presently, not empires and governments, the God who sustains the cosmos presently, who holds it in his hand, the God who knows all things, who was before all things, and in whom all things holds together, this morning puts his hand on our shoulder and says, hey, don't be afraid. He didn't send a delegation to do it. He came himself. So don't be afraid, Lucien, don't be afraid. I hold the keys. Don't be afraid. I know what you're going through. You know, when he writes to the 7 churches after that, every single one of those situations, and they're quite mixed, he says this phrase, he says this to them, all 7 of those churches, he says, I know. So City Gate, he says to us this morning, I know what you're facing. I know the uncertainties. I know. That's an amazing thought. And into your own personal life, you know, with our internal wrestles and struggles, he says to us this morning, I know. Don't be afraid. I know. I had a friend who called me several times when we were preparing to leave the UK. And he would just be amazing. He'd just talk and then he'd say, Nick, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And I kept on saying, what are you talking about? I'm not afraid. I was going to be afraid. But at the time, and then I realized he was just saying, no, Nick, don't be afraid. And then he said, no, God's got people everywhere. I've got people everywhere. And right now he's got people right here. Don't be afraid. I know. I think it's a wonderful thing. Do you know who I am? I'm the Alpha and the Omega. It says that earlier in Revelation. And now I'm the first and the last. The Alpha and the Omega are the first and the last letters of the Greek alphabet. I'm the beginning and the end. I'm the archetype, the beginning, and I'm the end. I'm the teleos. I'm the end point of anything. Your and my life happens entirely within that scope. We are never sort of out there drifting. We are contained, our stories with all of their mess and uncertainty and up and down and disappointment and defeat and victory and everything else happens within the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. And our lives are wrapped up somehow mysteriously in that. That has got to put courage in our hearts, that we're not just drifting around like whatever, we are drifting around like flotsam on the sea. No, we are contained within the life of him who holds the 7 stars, who is the Alpha, the Omega, and the beginning and the end. So don't be afraid. Fear is such a powerful weapon. It is such a powerful weapon. The enemy uses it on us all the time. Sneaking in with a little voice. Anyone hear that voice sometimes? What's your past? I know what you've done. And God says, I also know what you've done. And I've cleaned it. In fact, the past is no longer relevant. But the enemy comes and he begins to stimulate. He begins to stimulate fear. Oh gosh, fear of all kinds of things, you know. We fear loss, we fear lack, we fear ruin, we fear rejection. We fear pain, we fear failure, we fear that people might see what we really are like. We fear. And Jesus says, don't be afraid. I hold the keys of death and Hades. You know, the second most repeated command in this book that so many people say is too scary to read is this: do not be afraid. First one is look. The second one is don't be afraid. Jesus says, don't be afraid. So this is what John sees as we land. The messages he sends to the 7 churches come in the next 2 chapters, and they are weird at times, but they are beautiful and such encouraging messages. So, you know, no wonder John writes at the beginning, he says, you know, blessed are you who reads the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear it and take it to heart. Are we going to take to heart the picture that we're seeing of Jesus this morning? So City Gate, with that picture in mind, let the words of this greeting speak to us. This is now from a guy called John, who could say with a fair degree of certainty, he wasn't just saying nice, religiously pretty, flowery words. He writes this, he says, grace and peace to you from him who is and who was and who is to come, from Jesus Christ, the firstborn from the dead and the ruler of the kings of the earth. And everybody said, Amen. Amen.